Go get my cat t-shirt on display.
Let me do. There we go. Get that in. Hello, welcome to the Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. Welcome to Stream Street Day 121. No, 28. I can't read. Welcome. Yeah, it's day 128. Podcast guys, stay blessed. Drink loads of water. Patreon couldn't do it without you. I'm just going to fly this out straight at the start. Twitch chat, obviously, 11 out of 10. But I'm joined today by the wonderful, the ever famous. The stunningly gorgeous, brand new dad. That's a new thing I think on this Wargamer show is we have like new dads. We've got Val, but this is Neil. This is Neil. Hi Neil, how you doing? Neil Kerr is also his full name. How are you?
Hey Rob, not bad. I'm the Wargaming Dad. No, that's someone who subscribed. Yeah, Wargaming Dads Unite. Me, Tom, Val. Was it 3 days ago?
Yeah. Tom had one recently, right?
Yeah, all these. Well, Tom's son is a year old now, over a year old now.
Okay.
He had his last year, so he was new dad at ETC last year.
Yeah, and Tom that we're referring to is Tom, who is one of the triumvirate that are in charge of the WTC. So that's Neil, Tom, and Ishik. Neil, we're going to talk to Neil about the WTC later. New 40k, loads of stuff to talk about. Very excited to have you on as our special guest. Been looking forward to this all week actually, Neil. So thanks for coming on.
No worries, buddy.
All right,
I've got to do something when I'm on parental leave, haven't I? Other than build custodies.
What's it like being a new dad? How you doing?
It's good. It's hard, like it's the sleep and stuff and things like that, but it's awesome at the same time. I mean, it's like I got told beforehand. Daniel Hasbury, he's the Swedish captain. He's a good friend of mine. He said to me before, he's like, when he says like, there's no feeling like this, and he's right. You can't unless you experience it, you can't describe how it feels.
Okay.
It is awesome. Like the moment I saw him the first time, just this like feeling hit me, completely overwhelming, and it hasn't left me since.
Probably the exact opposite feeling I get when I see kids, when I'm like, oh my God, that's a lot of responsibility, that's terrifying. And I slowly start walking back out of a room. I don't even know that I'm doing it, it just happens. And I'm just like outside, I'm like, well, why am I here? I'm I'm really happy for you. I'm really happy. Are you getting enough sleep or that's easy? Because you're based in Sweden, right? And there's you get loads of time off. Yeah,
so getting enough sleep-ish, but I have problems sleeping anyway. So my sleep is bad to start with, but it's pretty okay. I mean, the first few weeks was really hard, but now Dylan, little boy, Dylan Albin, he's sleeping 2-3 hours a time. So at night he's only waking up maybe 3 times during the night, 2 or 3 times during the night, which is pretty good for both me and my wife. I mean, he's actually quite chill. I've heard all these horror stories about babies, like screaming all the time, crying all the time. He's very chill. Only cries when he's like, hungry or needs his nappy changing, basically.
Oh, so very similar to me.
Yeah. And then, Sweden. It's pretty amazing here. We get 100. Each parent gets 180 days parental leave, which is paid at 70% your wage, plus a bonus 10 days holiday, and that you can take for up to the first 4 years of his life. You can use those days. Wow. And you can even swap, and you can even like give each other some of your days as well. So basically, really? So you can give up to, I think it's up to 120 days you can give to one partner or the other of your own allocation. But you've got to keep some for yourself. So basically what's happening is I'm off now. It's now been 5 weeks I've been off work, and I'm off work till the middle of August. So I've been off for 8 weeks in total. Then I'm going to go back to work and go work to March. My wife's going to be off home full-time until March. And then I'm going to switch, and she's going to go to work, and I'm going to be at home for 6 months with him.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's
pretty
exciting.
Good. And we'll still have days left over after that.
Oh my God!
To use like later, like the following summer, take some extra holiday and that kind of thing. It's brilliant.
Did you? It's pretty amazing. I bet there's a whole bunch of people right now listening who are like, to put this in context with a good friend of the show, Jacob Berry from the Rage of Sigmar, when he's based in America, when him and his wonderful wife Margot just had their child, he just is like 2 months no paid work now. I get off. Like you're allowed to take 2 months off without being paid. Like they're like that gracious. There's quite a difference there.
There is. I mean, I've been chatting to some of my friends over there, the Beast Coast guys and the Steel City Legion guys, and like one of them, Rob, he recently had his kid as well, and he was just like, "Fuck off," When I explained to him what I get, and he's like, he has a good deal with his company. They gave him some paid paternity leave. I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks, but all the same, he's like, "Screw you." Just screw you. This is not fair.
I think that sounds about right. Also, Curve Point asked, does he cry when Croak doesn't go up in points in the GHB like Rob does too? I actually didn't cry. I think I laughed. So screw you, Curve Point, in the chat.
Yeah, in this household, the only thing for Age of Sigmar we care about is Slaves to Darkness.
Oh, exactly.
If Archeon stays with the right points, happy.
Yeah, you'll be very happy. So to introduce Neil, Neil obviously is the head judge of the WTC, formerly the ETC for 40k. So he's got a long and storied history in that, and there's so much to talk about with WTC. Obviously cancelled this year was the first one, but we've still got that going off next year, 2021. So looking forward to that, obviously, as long as everything works out. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. But Neil, before we do that, like, how did you end up? Like, how do you start off in the hobby? I know it's a boring question, but you've always got to find out how everyone started out.
I know, it's actually, I got asked, well, I didn't get asked the question, but I replied to this question last week. Do you know who Paul Scott is? Geordie
Yes.
Paul?
Yeah.
I mean, anyone who's worked for Workshop probably knows who Paul Scott was. He worked during the 2000s. But Paul, he actually posted on his Facebook, how did you get into it? And I actually worked it out. So I got into the hobby back in 1993. Just a long time ago.
Wow.
11 years old. I was a newsagent. I used to do paper round as newsagent, did the paper round for, and I saw this magazine on the shelf with like dragons on the front. I was a kid. I was into fantasy. I just read The Hobbit. I was just, what's this? I looked inside. I saw these miniatures. Oh, this is really cool. So I bought it. Went home and pored over these pages and read this battle report and everything. And I read about it, and it was the issue where they'd just released the Rogue Trader rules for Space Wolves. So this issue was all the fluff for the Space Wolves and like the rules. And I was like reading this, I was like so into it, like this is amazing. There was a battle report. I think it was a fantasy battle report, because Fantasy Battles, the first, I can't remember which edition, would be 4th edition, the first box set had just been released. And so I read it, and then the next month I bought another magazine, the next issue, and it had the battle report of Space Wolves in it, and I was like, this is the best thing ever. And my dad basically picked up on this, and he found out there was a Games Workshop in Preston, because I was living in Preston at the time. He took me down, bought me some models, and that was that.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah. So Space Wolves were my first army, and sort of dabbled with fantasy on and off, but my main game has always been 40k.
So I know this story already. I know your kind of like cycle into eventually becoming the head judge of the WTC. But like, when did competitive gaming start to take the front for you?
My first ever tournament was, Christ, it was like, I was still quite young. It was like 1990, I'm going to say 95, 96. It was just before the second edition Chaos Marine, but just after the second edition Chaos Space Marine Codex got released. This was back in the day. They ran a regional tournament in the northwest of all the GWs. And the top 3 people from each in-store GW tournament went to Manchester. Back when he had this massive store in Manchester, it had like a dozen tables in it, and they played like a final there on a day. So I managed to qualify as a little snot-nosed teenager. Managed to qualify, went to that, and that was really cool, and it was good fun. And then obviously with GWs and that, you sort of find out what the local gaming club is in Preston. It was the Ripple Warriors, and so I got involved with the Ripple Warriors, and it was like me and a couple of the lads, and one of the guys, his dad was one of the main people in it, a guy called Ian Miller. And he started taking us to the GTs and stuff. Second edition GW GTs, like back in the day. Wow. So it was pretty early on. I did take a break I moved to Sweden first time when I was 16, and I sort of took a hiatus from 40k. Got really into rugby, into girls as well, because I was 16 years old. But then I came back to the UK when I was 20, moved to Manchester, and for want of a hobby, because my job basically wasn't compatible with going to do rugby training, so the hours I worked. But for want of a hobby, I got back into Warhammer, and very quickly, gravitated towards the GW store in Manchester, met people, and just got playing, and went to a grand tournament that year. So and been solely playing competitive 40k since the early 2000s. We're talking, I don't know, 2003.
So is there? I mean, that is a story. Like that's a lot. Is there? Now, obviously, there's going to be some significant differences, but could you, for like some people maybe who are newer, could you was there anything about those times that you remember that doesn't really happen now, or was it significantly different? Do you know what I mean?
I don't think it's significantly different. I think the one big difference is that when I got back into competitive 40k in my early 20s and went to Warhammer World, so I got to tournaments again, there was lots of cliques. You went to Warhammer World for the GT, and everybody was in their little cliques, and nobody really hung out or socialised anyone outside their friend cliques. And I thought that was really shitty. I was like, this is not fun. And like the guys I was with, like a big shout out to Richard Hogan, Lefterius and Dwayne. These guys with me were all very like-minded. We were the guys that used to drag people to the pub in GW Manchester. We play games on the games on a Thursday, and we'd afterwards we'd say to them, "Who wants to come to the pub for a pint?" And this became a thing, and it became such a big thing, gaming, socializing, having a beer. So we decided, look at this. If we're going to go to these tournaments, we want to be more social. So we just started getting people involved, asking our opponents, "Do you want a pint? Do you want a drink?" And doing that. And at the same time, there was a couple of gaming groups that took it very seriously, and we were like, it's man dollars. You can't take it as seriously as these guys are doing. So we went the opposite way. We started being very stupid and very childish at times. And we basically came up with this thing. We became the famous or infamous gaming club called Flame On.
Right.
And we would have Flame On printed on all our dice instead of sixes. And when we'd all roll for the first turn at the tournament, we'd all time our rolls together and shout Flame On at the top of our voices. We wore bright red t-shirts. And we basically were obnoxious as fuck. And just really obnoxious, really loud Northerners in everybody's faces, drinking beer, having pints at the table, being all this loud silliness, taking the game seriously as well.
Yeah,
but not being the be all and end all of it, and people started gravitating towards us, and more people sort of joined our movement. People weren't even in Manchester, sort of became part of the club, and it just became this snowballing thing. And this kind of very social part of wargaming now. You go to a tournament, it's all pally, everyone's having pints together, everyone's offering opponent pints. Without sounding egotistical, we were one of the first people that really pushed that back in the 2000s.
Okay, all right. So so the community has always been like a large portion of why you would attend these events. Is that right?
Yeah. Just seen MG. Was it MG Pegasus?
Mm-hmm.
Did Neil meet my old boss Paul? Yeah, Paul Evans, good mate of mine. Yeah, Mr. GW Manchester. He's been manager there forever. He is the legend.
Okay.
So big shout out to him.
So you've obviously seen that social side grow, which is excellent. There's nothing I prefer now, nothing I enjoy more now than going to an event, obviously having poppadoms afterwards, and some nans with the lads. It's always a great time. So the competitive scene, obviously, you were playing competitively, and as much it sounds like you guys were taking the game seriously and playing, but also having a great time. How did that eventually move into playing for your country and the ETC? How did that all start to happen?
So the ETC started, I'm probably going to get the date wrong, but I think the first ETC was 2010, which was just fantasy. And then in 2011, 40k, they added 40k TTC. And one of the Manchester guys, one of the Flame On guys called Dave Minnis, found out about this tournament. He just saw this post on the old Warhammer forums, the old TWF Warhammer forums. Mm-hmm. It saw this post team tournament Poland, who wants to come? And basically he convinced, he's like, oh, who wants to do it? And so he created Team England, which was basically 8 other people who wanted to go to Poland for a weekend and get drunk and play 40k. I couldn't make it that year. I was between jobs and I didn't have the funds to do it, so I passed up on it. But the guys went over. The legend of it was that they flew over on the Friday to Berlin. They started drinking in Manchester Airport. They flew to Poland. They didn't go to sleep or stop drinking until they got back on the plane to Manchester on the Monday morning. They stayed. They drank. They stayed up and drank for like 48 hours straight. Got completely plastered. Had loads of fun, and they came 11th out of 10 teams.
Wow.
Because one of the teams went home on the Saturday after 3 games, and Team England still did worse than them, even though they played 6 games. So that was the first ever Team England, and that was just back. But the ETC used to be kind of like very jovial. I went to the first ETC in 2012, and it was the same. And the same thing. It was just 2012, 2007. I'm getting my dates all wrong. Anyway, 2007 I went to the first ETC, which was in Germany. And it was the same thing. We went over to Team England. We're going to take it a bit more seriously now, but we're still going about drinking. Like we actually were doing well as Team England. We were poised to play after Saturday. We won most of our games. We were going to play Sweden on the Sunday morning. So we went out to the pub with the Swedes and tried to get them so drunk that we win by default. It was this was how it was. Teams were going out together, getting drunk and all that. It's become more serious as time's gone on because the stakes have upped and people invest more and more time in it. But the ETC was basically started off as like a wargaming holiday, an extension of going to Warhammer World or Maelstrom or whatever to play tournaments. Instead of going down to Macclesfield to play Maelstrom, let's go to Germany and play for a weekend.
I mean, makes sense. Yeah, I can completely understand that, and I also would vouch for that as well. I think one of the things about doing live coverage that has been a conversation, and people may have heard me talk about this on the show. When you do the coverage, I'm very much about like the authenticity of what the thing is. So as much as I might want it to look like a sporting event or it seemed like this thing that people can attest to, there's also people half cut in the background, and you really can't ignore that. There's a good portion of the people who use it as their weekend away to blow off steam and have a great time, and I don't begrudge anyone that, and I think that's excellent, and I think that's really, really fun. Colonel Cabbage asked a good question in the chat. So when you were all half cut, how did you decide on the pairings at the tabletop? Is the real question.
Oh no, we weren't really half cut when we played. We drank beers and stuff, but the decision was still there. You still create your armies, and you'd be trying to predict the meta. Back then, obviously, it was all done on forums. It was nowhere near as cohesive as now. You can find it so much about everybody, but you're trying to predict the meta and stuff. I took a list that was demons with it was the old Epidemus Tallyman list, which was specifically tailored to take out monstrous creatures, Tyranids, and orc warbikers, for example. And so you'd have ideas going to the tournament, and it was a case of trying to make those matchups. I mean, it's become so much more now. I mean, back then it was a case of sitting down, going, "Here's the opponent's list, here's our list, 5 minutes, work it out, and just sort of play it by ear as you went along." Now you've got teams that spend months practicing against every single possible matchup they can think of against all the big teams they want to beat. They'll have they'll program it onto computer. They'll be working out the odds and the percentages for them, and literally like trying to work out the most favorable combinations of matchups possible. When it's so much more than what it used to be.
do you ever look at them and think nerds?
No, but I find it's super impressive. It is how it's evolved, and it's constantly evolving, and like I say, it's become this incredibly serious thing for a lot of the players. A lot of the guys who go to WTC, I've got to say the right name, it's WTC. For a lot of these guys, it is the accumulation of their year. They've worked hard to get into that team, and then they spend the whole year, everything they do, every tournament they go to, and every game they play is in some way theorizing and practicing for the big event.
Yeah.
That dedication is impressive, and you see it. It's like, a good example is the polls. When they release the lists a month before the event, the polls will take 2 weeks off work, and they sit there for 2 weeks playing the games, hundreds and hundreds of games to practice against what the opposition are bringing.
Yeah, they take it. Yeah, they're very serious. I'm actually very excited to find out more about like how these different nations compete and put their their work on their line, or like the time they put into it. Because having had conversations with you, Tom, and Ishik, it's actually been really, really interesting. I think is the right decision. I was obviously being a bit hyperbolic with the nerd statement. I was more I was giving you the space to talk about how awesome they all are, because it's genuinely fascinating, especially when you talk about the fact that these people are representing the nations. Now, I know, like you said, so I guess the question is, I know you've touched on it a little bit. How far on has it really come? And obviously it's now the WTC, but how far has it come on over the past years? Like, what big changes have you seen? What innovations? Like, how serious has it got from a bunch of lads being drunk in Macclesfield to like traveling all over the world?
I mean, it has got massive in terms of, like, before team selection was a case of who had the money, put your hands up, and then if more than 8 people put their hands up, okay, we'll try to work out who's the best. To now, most countries have some kind of qualification system, be it going off rankings, or the French run a series of qualifying tournaments throughout the year of 4-man teams, and the best 2 teams are the ETC team. It's all these things. The Swedes have a ranking system that goes over for a year, and they select the team through that. It's become just so much more complex because people invest so much time and money into it as well. And that's the other thing, like the level of dedication. Like, people still go there. When you go there, it's a social event like no other, because you've got people from all over the world, friends you only see once a year, and it is really bringing people together. And people have a drink in that. But before, people used to go out partying every single night and all that. Now, teams are back at their hotels, checking the lists. It's all focus now. Because then they know nobody wants to let someone else in their team down because the amount of money and time they invested in it. So that kind of like that kind of professional attitude is very much apparent. That's a big difference from what it was before. You've not got the Faroe Islands team marching around with bottles of vodka and Viking hats on their heads anymore. It used to be a tradition that every team brought bottles of spirits with them and switched with their opponents each round. Some teams still do that. Most teams don't anymore because they want to be a bit more focused.
Do you prefer that change?
Because I really love competitive 40k. And providing they don't lose sight of the fact that it is man dollies at the end of the day, providing they don't lose sight of that, I think it's great. Another big change is the role of the coach. Is that almost all these teams, or at least the teams are taking it very seriously, they will bring a coach with them. And that guy's job, because you can't in a game, you can't talk to each other like on your team. You can't go to your mate's table and give them advice, put things out. But what happens is you have a coach who'll go around and he'll be constantly monitoring all the games in a team. Because they'll obviously, before they start the round, they'll be predicting roughly what each game they think will get and the results. And they're trying to obviously aim for that win. And then the coach will be managing that. And if like a game starts going poorly, he'll then communicate to other players, right, you guys need to push for a few extra points because we need to make this up and stuff like that. And he's managing how aggressive or defensive the players within his team are. And that's an entire other layer of gaming that never existed when I started with the ETC.
Yeah, so because the thing about the ETC for people listening at home is teams of 8. So there's a lot of moving parts when that's occurring, right? Teams of 8 play versus each other at the event is how it works. So there's a lot on there. So the coach role, I'm really interested in the coach role. Are there people who have started to like write articles on the coach role, or started to like do information about the coach role? Because I actually think that's quite interesting. When you hear podcasts about like, how do you build a community in your local area, or like, you're really good at running a club, how do you do that? That sort of thing. I feel like that coaching element, because obviously there are professional 40k coaches. I'm doing bunny ears, FYI, everyone. But there are. Do you think that that's important?
Yeah, I mean, this coaching role, I think that's going to differentiate. You've got like, Nick Brown, all those guys who do coaching, they're like helping teach your players to play better. That's a different kind of coaching from the ETC coaching. This is about managing your team and getting the best performance out of your team. There are lots of people who have done this and are very good at coaching at ETC, but there aren't many who've talked about it. In fact, the only person I can think of who's done any kind of like podcast about it is Adam Abramovitz, who was the America coach last year. If he used to do an awesome podcast called The First General, and if you find that, then he's done an episode he talks about the ETC. It's also something we thought about because we're going to be starting a podcast, aren't we, Rob?
Yeah.
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 And we're going to the WTC Squadcast. And one of the things we're going to do is we want to actually interview people like Adam. It's like the Polish guy, who's one of the coaches there. These guys have been coaches for many, many years and are very good at it. We want to interview them and get them to talk about what they do, because it is so nuanced, and for a lot of people, it's probably something they've never considered. When you're part of a team, the coach isn't just the guy going to cut the water. A lot of teams say that they wouldn't win the event, or they wouldn't do as well as they did without their coach. It's that important a role.
Yeah, I think it's actually. I think having understood conversations with you guys, and it's really exciting to be able to announce that we're all going to put the WTC Squadcast podcast out, which is really fun because I think both Neil, Ishik, and Tom have got an incredible amount of information that they can deliver, whether it not be from themselves, it be from people like Adam. All of the team captains, coaches, like we talked about the French guys a minute ago. Obviously, it'll be really awesome to be able to hear those French guys talk about how they set it up, how they produce those people who play for them. Because different countries do different things. And you guys, I think the thing that you'll find about Ishik, Tom, and Neil is they're not shy about telling you what they think and what their opinions are.
Nope.
Yeah. So if they're like, do you know what, this team, they've got a really crappy way of picking their members, they'll tell you. So it's very, very, very exciting to hear that, especially from people who've done it for years. Obviously with something like also the Super Series, Neil, I know you're aware of that, which we've got going on. It's exciting to be able to because you'll have seen by now we put the coach role in, and that's directly come of conversations with people like Tom and you, and understanding that actually there are people who can really, really influence helping teams and players get better, because some people maybe aren't the very best player, but they're great strategists. And those are different skill sets, right? Like, you might not be the best striker, but you might be the best team manager in the world. That's a fact. And so, being aware of those skill sets is fascinating, and I can't wait to hear more of that and find out more. Colonel Cabbage had a good question. Sorry. Question is about coaches, but maybe also team pairings. Maybe this isn't for you to answer because Neil's role isn't actually often doing team pairings, but I'll ask him anyway. Do you tend to find that you're predicting wins or you're predicting points?
Predicting points.
Okay.
Predicting points, sure.
Could you expand on that for people?
I'll expand on that because the ETC, obviously things are now changed with 9th edition, which we can go into. But previously, the ETC worked on a system like a 20-0 system. So each game would produce a result that was a sum of 20. So, put one player gets 60, the other player get 14 or 10-10 or whatever. And to win a round, your team had to score more than 86 points in a round. Mm-hmm. So there's a threshold you had to attain. So it didn't matter so wins and losses are also important. More wins equals more points. But even the losses, because you'll have players who will go into games expecting to lose. Yep. But the trick is, how little can they lose by? How many points can they take from that losing matchup? So it's all about managing the points. It's all about massaging the points to make sure you're in the safest way possible, comfortably breaking that threshold without risking any games. So you'd have match. So the whole skill comes back down to the pairing system, that a team will present a list as a defender, and then the opposition will present two lists to attack that list, and the defender will choose who he wants to meet. So obviously there's the favouring goes onto the attacking team, because they're obviously have to see what they're going to do. They'll try and put a positive matchup for themselves there. And then it's down to the defender to obviously play that game out. And you're not always playing to win, because to play to win in a certain matchup will mean you probably get wiped out. It'd be playing to maximise the points you can take from that game rather than winning, which is a very different mentality from single play 40k. So it's all about points. It's all about how to maximise the points from each player, regardless if it's win or a loss. With 9th edition, it's going to be slightly different. We're toying with we're obviously working out the exacts of the scoring process in 9th edition. But what we're thinking is that it'll be, to win a round, you'll have to win 5 of the 8 matches and have a points differential grade of more than 100 points over your opponents.
Right.
So a clear win. You'll have won the round by a clear win in terms of points. But that's
That's
going to
quite
be
that's quite significant, right?
yeah, that's going to be quite significant. The reason for it is we want to make it slightly harder to get a win because we're going to be playing more rounds this year.
And also
And
maybe have more teams as well.
more teams. We're looking to play 8 rounds, and hopefully we'll have 40 plus teams this year, based off like the interest we've had. So we need to make sure that people aren't just getting easy wins and running away with it quickly. But the kind of the exactities of scoring this year will get balanced out over the next 6 months as we get feedback from teams and play testing and stuff like that as well.
Yes. I think that's really interesting about the WTC is that it is groups of players and obviously team captains and whatnot feeding back. It's kind of like the playtester experience, but expanded out because you've got a bunch of very competitive players all filtering information up to you guys at the top. And they're not shy about their opinions either, which I know you've had to deal with.
I mean, and that's probably a really important thing. I say this every time people ask me the WTC. The one thing that makes the WTC unique compared to any other tournament is the fact that the participants are the ones that shape the event. It's me, Tom, and Ishik. We steer the ship. We try to help it avoid any obvious pitfalls. But like the rules, like we created a rules pack, and then that rules pack, all the teams we look at rules pack, and they're gonna be changing it, editing it. They're gonna be coming with their own feedback. At the end of the day, it's going to be what they want to play rather than what a TO thinks is the best thing to play.
Yeah.
Which is very unique. I know that some events like Nova, Mike Brandt involves the Beast Coast guys or his local gaming group to play test missions and stuff like that. But I don't think any tournament comes to the level that we do, where every single team involved has an equal say in what happens.
I think that's actually really important as well, especially with the diversity, the meta, and also how many reps people get in. Like you're talking about the Polish guys then, it's just like imagine taking 2 weeks off and just doing reps all day, every day. It's pretty overwhelming. Big shout out, by the way, to both the Dreadwoods and Drucifer for subscribing. Thanks. And to anyone else who has today, in case I missed it. Scrivo, I know you have. Ty Winning, Beard and Brew. So thanks very much. But your role is slightly different to Tom's, obviously, and Ishik's, and in that you're the judge. So can you tell us about, or at least the head judge, can you tell us how that came to be? Because I think that's a fun story. Yeah.
So I played the first year I worked out properly what we were thinking. The first time I played ETC was 2009. I played for England. There was no Team Scotland. The next year we got Team Scotland together. So in 2010 I played for Team Scotland along with Tim King, who's the captain, the guy who used to work at Element Games and Maelstrom Games. And then eventually I became captain as well. So I was in Team Scotland so I played ETC 2009 as England, 2010 as Scotland, and I played as Scotland through 2010, 11, 12, and 13. At which point I'd moved to Sweden. I was Scotland's captain in 2013, but I'd actually moved to Sweden in 2012. And so I was sort of thinking to myself, how to continue playing, because it felt odd to still be part of Team Scotland, play for Team Scotland. I wasn't even going to be attending events in Scotland anymore.
Yeah.
Or the UK. And it felt sort of very, very bad because the idea of the Scottish team was to help, as I think of most CTC teams are. It's a great way to build the community in that country. The Scottish competitive scene is a big deal now. It's a big thing. It wasn't at all 10 years ago. It was non-existent. There was one day event in Scotland back then. So it was a case of it felt very detrimental to the ethos of the Scottish team in terms of helping the community if I was to stay in the team. So I was thinking what am I going to do? Am I going to apply for Sweden next? In the following year, should I apply for Sweden? But I went to the 2013 ETC, and I had multiple really bad experiences at the table. Because the problem with the ETC up until that point was that, unfortunately, cheating was synonymous with the ETC. Slow play and outright cheating was, quote unquote, part of the game.
Wow.
And it had been for years. This had been a thing you could fight against. That there were certain teams, certain players, certain teams that you were fuck's sake, I have to play them. You know they're a bunch of cheats. You know this is going to be a fucking ball ache, and it's a case of like just trying to stop them cheating as much as possible. And and make things worse, the referees, people who refereeing, didn't really do much.
Okay.
You know, you would call people out, you'd call referees to the table, and nothing would happen. And
which must be really frustrating.
Very frustrating. You know, like I had an opponent one year who was in a losing. He was in a matchup he knew he couldn't win, and so he took an hour and a half to deploy his army.
Oh,
I shit you not, an hour and a half. And I've got the head ref coming to me and telling me that I need to speed the game up. I'm like, dude, I deployed, he's still deploying. You penalise him, and then nothing happens.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
Speed up, please. We get to turn 2, the game ends. It's like, this guy took too long. Oh well, you know, there was sort of this like people didn't want to get confrontational.
Yeah, and I can, do you know what, I can understand that, you know, especially with based on like how you were just describing it, and that's been my experience at a lot of events and TOs as well. And that's no slight against TOs in no way, shape, or form. But someone has to decide, do you know what I'm going to do this weekend? Instead of having a really nice time with my friends, I'm going to make sure no one's a dick. And that's a lot of like pressure, not to put on yourself, but also to decide I'm not going to go and have the best weekend potentially. Do you know what I mean? Like coming back from, well, being a kid when I was like 18, I was a doorman for several years. You know, there'd people be on a night out and, you know, you're watching them have a great time and you're like, I'm at work. And some people didn't really like catch that correlation sometimes. And I feel it's kind of similar. So I can kind of get it. Do you know what I mean? Some like on the odd occasion.
No, absolutely. I mean, I used to be a doorman crew at the academy in Manchester doing all the gigs. So same thing. You know, it's about it was a fun job, but it was more about making sure everyone else had fun than me having fun.
Yeah.
And that was kind of it. I just got sick of it. That event, there was one moment which really put a horrible taste in my mouth. And it was like almost a board flipping moment when the referees came over and this was pointed out, this guy was doing something he'd been accused of doing and it was blatantly done it, or people who'd discreetly come over to watch the game who were like, yeah, he's doing this, he's cheating. We've all seen him doing this. And the referee does nothing.
Right.
Nothing. Okay. And it's just like, I was just sick of it. So typical Warhammer player, what do? After the ETC, I go into the forum, I have a huge rant, and I keyboard hero and rant about how terrible it all is. But what I did do, and then someone said, well, if it's that bad, why don't you fix it? And I went, okay, I will. I mean, like I say, I used to be doorman, I'm a rugby player, I'm a qualified international rugby referee, was a teacher. You know, people management's not a problem. Telling people to stop being dicks is not a problem for me. Right. So I was like, right, I will be referee, and this is and if I'm referee, this is what has to happen. And everyone went with it because I was known in the community. Everyone knew who I was in the ETC community, and so they went with it. And it's the first couple of years, you know, there were a lot of people got very upset because I was really heavy-handed. I was like, no, you are cheating. This is the consequence. Bam. You know, no bullshit, no mucking around. This is how it's going to be from now on because we need to get rid of this. We need to stop people accepting cheating as part of the event. Yeah. And it's 10 years on. It's much better. You know, it's been sort of kicking and screaming, very bloody at times. Had a guy once literally pick a fight with me in the event, which is amazing. You can buy, if you buy me a beer, I'll tell you about that off stream. You know, I've had to eject a few people from the event. I've had to red card a few people over the years, but by and large, it's cleaned up. The event's cleaned up, and now you no longer hear people going, "Oh, for fuck's sake, we don't want to play that thing. It's a bunch of cheats." That doesn't happen. That's not the case anymore because everybody's accepted that you can't play like that, so don't play like that.
Well, it's kind of interesting, right? Because, like, yeah, it's you know, some people might be like, "Oh, wow, I can't believe that was allowed to happen." So, as we talked about, the selection process is already a bit janky in some places, or was importantly. But also, you might be asking for like a cultural shift back into the country of origin. Maybe it was fairly accepted in the country of origin that, like, you know, just moving everything a bit loose was fine. You know, like it's like, I've moved that a bit. I'm nudging that. I'm just putting that there. That's about there. That's fine. You know, I've seen similar things grow over the time. Like a lot of like describing stuff to intent. As you talk about forums and predicting the meta has become more popularized, also behavior on the tabletop and how we all behave has also become. Well, I don't think that's even necessarily cardinally set in stone somewhere at the moment. Like for me, whenever I turn up to the tabletop, I start with my opponent. I'm like, "Hi, if I roll any dice not flat on, I'm gonna re-roll it, good or bad." And I tell them that every time at the start. I say I'm always going to talk about my intent. And I'm going to say, and you and me are going to have a conversation about it, and then we're going to agree yes or no. Are you okay with that? Yeah, I'm going to play with that. But that's still like people are like, oh, this guy's being a bit of a serious twat, and I'm like, no, this is so we have no problems later on.
Yeah.
This is. Do you know what I mean?
I agree. I mean, that's it. How you play 40k with your mates in your garage or in your bedroom or whatever. It shouldn't be any different from how you play a tournament, personally.
Yes.
When you play with your mates, you play with intent. You talk about what you're doing all the time. You point out any obvious mistakes, and you don't try to cheat. You don't try to pick up extra dice or anything like that. You don't do that shit with your mates because you wouldn't be your mates if you did.
Exactly.
So why do people do it at a tournament? And the answer is because they're too desperate to win. There's a kind of green-eyed monster that comes into play, the idea of winning, and some people don't manage that pressure very well. This is a perfect example. This happened 2 years ago at the ETC. Russia versus America, basically playing for first place, who will win the ETC. And they paired up, and the Russians have made their predictions on the matches. And I think 3 of the matches they predicted would be big wins for them flipped. Like they were seized on, or they hadn't properly analysed the match properly, and those games were massive, like 0-point losses against them. Oh, wow. And so the pressure's on. They're like, "Fuck, our plan's up in smoke." And so their coach goes to everyone else like, "Oh, this has happened. We need all the points you can get." And he said it to one of the players, this young lad, Busek. He was the second time at ETC, very young guy, and this kid is in a losing match to start with. He's playing a matchup he's going to lose no matter what. And his coach just come and said, well, you need to get as many points as possible or we lose the event. And he took the pressure the wrong way. And he basically slowed the game. He deliberately started slow. He just slowed the game down completely. He was, unnecessarily wasting time, procrastinating or moving a model for 5 minutes, 10 minutes kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I got called over. And it was getting quite heated because the pressure was on, and the Americans obviously getting really tense, like this guy's doing this, and the Russian guys obviously getting really upset. And I was like, okay, go away, we'll deal with it. And we famously we sent everyone away. We worked out what was going to happen with the event because the round was almost over anyway, so they weren't able to play the game out. So we worked it all out. We came back with a solution. We told the coach, the captain, said, "This is what's happened. This is our decision. This is the solution. This is what's going to happen." And we actually worked out what the result should be with approximation. And they were both happy with that. And and they had a long chat, the Russians, afterwards, because this kid had been no issues with him all the times he played previously, and he just got put in he took the pressure the wrong way. And just had a chat with him, like, look, shit happens, learn from it. Next time you're in that situation, just try to keep your head.
Yes.
And that happens, and I'm fine with that. But the flip side of it is you have people who blatantly cheat,
right?
Who consciously, blatantly cheat. I've seen someone post in the chat there about issues at Warhammer World. There's a couple of very well-known bad actors in the UK who blatantly cheat at events, consciously do it to win, and that's what I have an issue with. And that's what when I find those people at the ETC, they're the people I come down on, like the wrath of God.
Yeah.
No ifs, no buts. This year, somebody was caught for loaded die. No ifs, no buts. I don't care. You're out.
Yeah. That's actually a really interesting point. I think that the mechanics of the game sometimes allow for a lot of granularity, which is why I think some people push back always on the fact that it can be a competitive game. Would you say that things like streaming has helped maybe clear some of those elements out, or maybe even just more eyes in the community on stuff? Does that make sense?
Yes and no. I think streaming has helped. I think it's also been quite negative. I mean, again, this whole thing of pressure. If you've never been on a stream before, how do you react to the pressure of being watched all the time?
Yeah,
that kind of pressure can do funny things to you. At the same time, you have these internet warriors, these internet heroes who sit there analyzing the streams, watching the stream, not to watch the game. They're watching the stream to find a mistake. because
Right.
they want to be the guy that brought down Sean Naden because Sean Naden made a mistake. They want
Right.
to be the guy that can go over the internet and say this guy cheated. It was me who caught him. And so I think there is some negativity there actually, and it's a very hard. And it's hard to balance because yet at the same time you want to catch cheats, and maybe someone cheats and the opposite. It's not been at the event itself. It's not been picked up on, but it's been seen live, and it's a very hard balance. I'm not saying there's no right or wrong answer, but I think that it is something to take with trepidation. I know, like from I've never played on stream before, and I think it'd be really weird to put on a stream.
Well, I
probably,
think
I would probably behave differently as a result to how I normally do because it's just be a weird experience.
I think it's very, very different when you mic up the players. I think miking up the players not only is terrible TV, but I also think it the players know that they're in a communication then, and I don't think that's fair. I think that's an undue level of pressure miking up the players personally. I'm not for it. That's why I like there being a table boss. And our table bosses for a long time have also been judges. Or not judges, they've been more refs. So they stop the game if there's an issue and they go call the TO. That's kind of our problem that we've had on this Wargamer and T-Sports Network sort of coverage that we've had. Is that it's never been our event. So if there's been an issue, it's like stop the game. And that only actually came into effect as of maybe September, October last year. Because we had a couple of events where we had a couple of issues last year, and I started to inform all events. I was like, "Hey guys, I'm gonna just need you to know that my table bosses are gonna be refs. If they see something that's not right, they're gonna stop the game. They're gonna go get you, and they'll let you make the decision as the TO, because TOs are normally the judges, right? That's kind of been our process, but that's still super hard, and not with the intent to be like, can't wait to catch someone." It's just like, more than anything, it's been to protect the players, especially like you say, from the internet as a whole in some situations. Sometimes, or it's been to be like, you're cheating. You need to stop that. One of the two. But I actually think that streaming is very much like your inclusion and what you've done with the WTC. I think streaming will start to clarify. Like if you're a cheat, let's say, and also I'd like to point out that it's super rare, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I've been head referee for like 7 years. 7 times been head referee. I've given out 3 red cards in 7 years out of the hundreds and hundreds of games being played in those 7 years. Over 1,000 games, 3 red cards. It's a rare thing.
Yeah, super rare. Super rare. But I also think that like the wargaming community almost needs that not cleansing, that's not the right word, but it just needs to like just level up a little bit and just people be like, do you know what, fair cop. Like we need to sort this out, which I think people should praise you for that, because actually probably your decision to do that, you might not have realized its ramifications. You might have cleaned up what happened at that event, but then that team will have gone back to their local communities and be like, we need to sort ourselves out. And then that might have filtered down into those countries, which is, I don't know if you'd have had any stories of that, but that sounds like that's...
I have. I've been told specifically about stuff like that.
Oh, okay, well, that's good.
People I've reprimanded, and then it's like, okay, there's been questions about this person in the past in his local community, and then people sort of woke up and realized, well, actually, maybe, there is an issue here. And I think one thing to say as well about this whole kind of like the internet watching games and looking for these mistakes. I mean, I will put money on the table and challenge anyone to say that they play a perfect game.
Oh, yeah.
It is impossible to play a perfect game. It is impossible to move every single model correctly, to do everything correctly. You'll always make these unintentional minor mistakes. And obviously, your opponent will pick up on them. Most of the time, your opponent will pick up on them as well. And they'll be like, hey, buddy, there was one extra die, or there's, how many times you roll dice and you forget there's a -1 to hit or something. There's these small things. Mm-hmm. And there's got to be that expectation that people aren't there. You shouldn't be going into a game thinking your opponent's going to cheat. And that's why I hate this kind of like thing in the internet of people watching games to find cheating, because it taints their what they're going to see. Obviously, their objectivity is tainted at that point. But at the same time, there has to be sort of like a level of, yeah, okay, buddy, you did wrong. And you see it instantly. Like when I've been called to tables, when there's been an issue and I'm called to a table, the amount of times like it's been picked up, and it'll be picked up by somebody else normally, and they're like, oh, there's this issue, come to this table. And by the time I get to the table, the players have sorted it out themselves. Like, oh yeah, this happened. We talked through it. We're happy. We're done. Both players have sorted out themselves. When it's very obvious when it was a blatant case of cheating, when a person purposely cheated because their body language, how defensive they become, all these things scream that they've been caught out. Again, the example, the guy this year who got caught with the loaded die, like the two people I caught with the loaded die, their reactions, their body language when the referees approached them, it was pain. As you've been a doorman, yourself, you see it on people. You see it when someone's got something. If someone walks up and they've got something on them they're not meant to have, and you're doing some random searches, you'll see the people in the line start to get sweaty. It's that kind of reaction.
So I understand, and I think that everyone in the chat is agreeing with you that the difference between mistakes and intentional advantage is and it's, again, to qualify, super rare. I've only had probably one outrageous experience at an event with some Italian fuck who couldn't finish his game by we didn't finish turn 1. I think if you go back and listen to one of the early 40k shows that me and Nick and Tom did, it was just outrageous behaviour. It was one of the worst experiences of wargaming I had, but that's one in hundreds of games. Have you got any advice for what you should do as a player when you're playing someone on the tabletop and you feel that something like that might be going on, or you feel like there are mistakes? What's your advice, and what's your advice to TOs as well?
Well, my advice is, first of all, tell your opponent, say, mate, time, you're going a bit slow. Is how much time we've got left? Because it may well be, again, it's rarely deliberate. So don't be confrontational about it, but point out these things. Point out, dude, every time you move, you sort of you're being a bit lax. You're moving these guys as the computers. I want you to be a bit more exact, please. These kind of things can just be very simple, and they can be done, and there's no hard feelings about it. If you got an issue that's sort of that can't be resolved that way, or you've sort of brought it up and it's still not been fixed, then you go to TO. And then this is where TOs need to, being quite rude, grow a pair, because you need. At the end of the day, these people are all paying customers, and you want these people to come back to your event, and you don't want these people to go off and slack your event off. But if there's somebody who's blatantly cheating at an event, doing stuff that's blatantly cheating, you're going to get much worse press from everyone else at the event for allowing that cheater to come back, and for allowing that cheater just to keep doing his shit there, than you will for calling that one guy out. No matter how much he screams and rants and raves, the rest of your community will applaud you for it. And the great example is, I can't remember the guy's name, but this guy at Warhammer World, Tom Layton's played other people, hiding his seized dice in the ruins. This guy is notorious for cheating.
Yeah.
Why is he then invited to the LGT?
Agreed.
And
then Stephen Box has to make a video about it afterwards. And just FYI, his name's Patrick Sanfilipino, and fuck that guy. Yeah, in the eye.
I called Zach out about it. I said, why is he allowed? And it's like, oh, I'm going to give him a chance. Like, no, don't court controversy.
Yeah, well, that's actually
every game he spoils. If you say no to him, he's going to bitch to his 10 mates, and they're going to bitch. But every game he ruins, that person's 10 mates are going to bitch, and there's going to be ruin more people, and there'll be more people bitching than his 10 mates at the end of the day. If he plays 5 games and cheats in 4, then that's 40 people bitching about you.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with that.
That's it, and that's my issue. And again, it's calling out Warhammer World. I know it's very hard for them because they have different constraints on them, but it really upsets me when I hear time and time again, people cheating at the GW events, because those events are meant to be less hardcore, shall we say, less competitive. And GW have deliberately tailored their rules pack and the way things happen at those events to make them slightly less cutthroat. And then people still show up and playing like it's the Olympic final or something. I just don't get it. I really don't understand. And I think it's really detrimental for GW in the long run that they don't take a harder stance against cheating at their events. I really do.
Yeah, I agree with you. I actually think that a lot of that's to do with constraints on the events team not really being an events team, more just being a sales team.
I agree. It is an issue for them, but it's an issue. But this is the problem is that they are the flagship, shall we say, and a lot of TOs will look to them. And their behaviour, their way of running an event will filter down. Just like how I run an event filters down, how Reese, when he runs out LVO, that filters down into the community.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think you got to lead from the front, and I also think Games Workshop won't do that. And I've said time and time again, the worst place to play Warhammer at an event is a Warhammer World, which is the weirdest situation. It's always organised worse than pretty much any other event I've been to. There's almost no actual judging done. Which is can be an issue in a tournament of all things. So but to try and end on a positive, I think
we have to,
I think you tackle what can only be, if you are listening to this, Neil takes it on himself, and I kind of prefixed it, takes it on himself, as do the rest of the WTC team, take it on themselves to work hard to make sure that their events have integrity. And that's hard. Having integrity is genuinely a tough experience. But have there been any positives that have come out of this for you, do you think?
I mean, don't get me wrong, I love being a referee at WTC. It is hard work. It is a job and it's hard work. And, by the end of the week, by the end of each day, I'm shattered. But it's great because I get to spend the whole weekend walking around, chatting to my mates, catch up with all the different players and all the different teams, having drinks. I don't have the pressure of having to stress about my next game. I don't have the pressure of having to stress about the results. I don't have to go back to my hotel in the evening and sit there for hours planning the next round. I can go to the pub. I actually have more. I socialize more now at the WTC than I did as a player.
Yes.
And for me, socializing at events is. I've played competitive 40k for over 20 years. I really don't give a shit about winning anymore. I've kind of got to that point, and it sounds really egotistical, but I've won enough to not have to be chasing the win all the time. If I win, I win. It's fantastic. But if I go 4-1, I'm still just as happy. I don't get down when I lose the last one. I miss out on the podium in the last round anymore, because it's not the reason I go to the event. I go to events to roll dice, play challenging games of 40k, and hang out with all my mates. So the WTC, I do challenge refereeing and hang out with all my mates, and sometimes roll dice for people.
If they're too drunk to roll them themselves.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think all of us need to take some responsibility, and if there's a lesson to learn here, or the lesson I'm learning is to take some responsibility as a community, wherever your local community is, to try and put into place some stricter rules, and also because it's more fun. It's more fun. If I know I don't have to go to an event and I have to be the one to manage my opponent and make sure they're not being an arsehole, it's there's a guy who I could just talk to and he'll deal with it. That's much more fun. That's why you all have fun at pubs, because you're do you know what? If someone starts being an arsehole, the doorman will deal with it, and I don't have to. You don't go you're not going out for a fight. You're going out for a drink and have a laugh. That's the unless you're in Mansfield, and then it's a different situation. I haven't cared about winning since Rob wiped me out in turn 1 at my first tournament. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate that. Neil, it's been a pleasure talking to you. You are going to be able to hear Neil loads more on the WTC Squadcast, so that'll be a podcast coming out soon, and I promise I'll let you guys know when and where that'll be available. And also, you can always head over to the World Team Championships, so the WTC 40k website as well, to check out all the stuff that's happening for the WTC, and I'll include all those in the show notes. Have you got any shout-outs, Neil, before we head out for the day?
Too many.
Oh,
I mean, just a shout out to everybody who should have been at WTC this year, because COVID, 2020 sucks. Apart from my son being born, COVID sucks. We had to cancel the WTC this year, which was a big disappointment to everybody, and it's obviously first time in what 13, 14 years I'm not going to be able to catch up with her in the summer. So big shout out to everybody who should have been there, and also looking forward to seeing everybody again next year.
Yeah, same. Oh, I'm looking forward to going next year. That's all I'm going to tell you. Yeah, looking forward.
It's going to be amazing, Rob. You're gonna love it. There is no. I mean, it sounds like it's bragging, but ask anyone who's been to the WTC, and they will say there's no event like it. It's something else.
Yeah. There we go. and I can't wait. And I can't wait to take you all with me through the TV box one day. Right. Anyway, thanks, Neil. I'd love to have you on again. Obviously, it's been amazing talking to you.
Yeah.
Thank you to everyone in the Twitch chat. You guys are great. Big love. Thank you to everyone on the podcast. Stay hydrated, and Patreon. Couldn't do it without you. Don't forget to join me. Tom is away this weekend, but don't forget to join me and the 40k gang tonight. We've got a very special friend. Our friend Dick is coming, and we do love a good bit of Dick. So he'll be on the show later. We'll be talking about 40k units that we think might be able to hold objectives and score primaries. Which I think is going to be a really important thing for people to learn in the future. Everyone have a great day. Yeah, Custodies. Great. Yeah, they'll do it well. We'll see you guys later. Have a good day. Bye.